And of course, International Women's Day is not just the one day a year, but every day what we say in as much as what we do and how we act. Thank you very much to UN Women, to Alia Al Yassir for leading that session over there, and to the regional spotlights in collaboration with UN Women. Now, of course, we have been bringing you a lounge feature where you can meet with delegates in and out of the different sessions that you're in. I know that you're making not only new contacts, but also new friendships along the way. And over on the public chat, we can see people joining in from Jakarta, from Colombia, from the Netherlands, and from many, many more places, all in solidarity, talking about WEPs, talking about Peru, that message from Luciana coming in just over there. Samantha over in New York, and Trini, I think, is over in Denmark as well. Fatima over in Bolivia. So really a great dynamism throughout, and how we create a community from today and how we use that and leverage that going forward is going to ensure that the legacy of this Target Gender Equality Live 2022 does not stay within the space of March 15th on one day alone. Let's go now to the networking, the engaging, to the DM chats that you can do with your fellow attendees. And of course, we're going to keep the lounges open throughout. A quick reminder, again, that Spanish translation is also available throughout the day. And you can find the information on how you access that on your mobile device or also on your computer. That's the QR code. You've got the help team standing by over through the chat feature. We can bring you to where you need to be with the language, with the communication tools that are best for you and your community. Let's do another poll. This is another new feature this year in addition to the lounge. We tried a poll a bit earlier in the day. I think it was about the aspect that would create the biggest impact for improving gender equality, but also sustainable development. Let's do another poll now. Again, all you have to do is select the answer that's most applicable or closest to the response that you would want to give. But instead of giving you a real-time result, I'm going to ask Adam, who I'll introduce you to in just a moment, to reflect on those results. You've got a little bit more time to get your answers in over here. The results will be revealed, as we said, in the next session, but the question is coming up now. What is the global average percentage of female STEM graduates in higher education? And we started hearing about STEM a couple of sessions ago from our speakers. So what's the global average percentage of female STEM graduates in higher education? We've given you a span of results that you could pick on: 16%, 27%, 35%, or do you think it is as high or as low as 42%? Get voting on that live poll. We'll be collating the results. In the meantime, the next session, we're going to be hearing and learning about insights on transforming the workplace and how we can double down on gender equality in times of crisis. Of course, we're not only in a time of crisis now, but in a time of combined multiple crises. Over here, we can look at the current times, from climate crisis to global unemployment to the pandemic, how that's being impacted by gender inequality, or in reverse, how they've contributed to the widening of the economic gender gap to over 200 years, we hear, but also how these have increased the urgency to act for some business leaders that have made it their mission, their calling, to advance women's leadership, including in male-dominated fields, close the gender pay gap once and for all, and build truly inclusive workplaces. Holistic strategies backed up by measurable targets, all the way from SMEs to the big multinationals. To kick off this session, it's my great honor to introduce you to Marco Gallina, who is the CEO of Grupo Bell, a company that has not only participated in the Target Gender Equality Initiative in Portugal, but has also set a public target for women's leadership under a national campaign launched by Global Compact Network Portugal. After that, we're going to go straight on to the moderator who I mentioned a bit earlier. I'll leave you in the very capable hands of Adam Roy Gordon, who is the head of the secretariat at the Global Compact Network USA, which is one of 50 countries, or over 50 countries, that is implementing the Target Gender Equality Initiative. So before Adam Roy Gordon, we're going to introduce you first to Marco Gallina.
Gender equality, inclusion, that's the basic values of human rights. In our group, we make efforts every day to respect these basic values. When we are talking about the world, about all these crises we are living after COVID, about the values paid to women, we truly understand there's a super different value between men and women. So we must fight these kind of problems to have a better future. More than that, gender equality gives us the values to fight against corruption, to fight against the big difference that we have in the world. I'm a citizen of the world. When I travel to Africa, to several countries, I can see the difference between the countries that are more advanced in gender equality and inclusion. So we can see the difference, and they are quite important for our future. And when we are talking about the future of companies, sustainability, this should be the core values of our group and our world. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, James, for this great introduction. And thank you, Marco, for setting the context for this session and your leadership in Portugal. As noted, I'm Adam Roy Gordon, Director of Network USA, and we're pleased to be delivering the Target Gender Equality Accelerator in the United States, a critical initiative to accelerate corporate gender equality leadership. Bell Group is indeed one of over 800 companies that has participated in the Target Gender Equality Initiative. It is encouraging to see that more than 90% of accelerator participants around the world either have targets for gender equality in place, are adapting existing targets, or drafting new targets. And I'm pleased to share that, for example, 83% of participating companies are building a new action plan or adapting an existing action plan based on learnings from the accelerator. Today, we are launching recruitment for the new round of the Global Target Gender Equality Accelerator. And for companies already committed to the UN Global Compact, you can sign up on the UN Global Compact webpage with the link posted in the chat. We have focused on the topic of women's leadership and gender equality in the workplace because, as we know, it's a catalyst and interrelated as a foundation to accelerate progress for the Sustainable Development Goals overall. We know that identifying an ambitious but realistic target for your company's context takes time and depends on many internal and external factors. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. And indeed, the multiple crises we face today have required companies to ensure their action plans are taking all types of megatrends into account, from job and unemployment crises to climate, COVID-19 or conflict and humanitarian crises, quite relevant today. Working towards gender equality is a proven way to support all of a company's positive impacts in the world. These crises are also risking to broaden the gender gap and have underlined that taking action for gender equality is more urgent than ever before. Neglecting gender equality in times of crisis is a recipe for worsening crises. Now is exactly the time when we must double down on our gender equity efforts. As the data shows, this supports employee retention, it reinforces peace and prosperity, and it plays an important role in climate action. Gender equality underlines every SDG and is foundational for the world we all want. And with that, let's get started. I'm pleased to introduce our speakers for this panel, Mr. Vidyongtias, President Director of Kalbe Pharma in Indonesia. Thank you for joining us. Ms. Fiona Alfaro Dahlstrom, Sustainability and Communications Executive at Del Sur in El Salvador. Thank you, Fiona. And Ms. Bertina Engelbrecht, CEO of Clicks Group Limited in South Africa. Thank you, Bertina. We're joined from all around the world, both on stage and in the audience. And I'd like to start with a question for all speakers. And we'll start with Bertina, just to set you up. Building off the insightful reflections shared by Mr. Galina, also, all of your organizations have participated in the Target Gender Equality Accelerator in Indonesia, El Salvador, and South Africa, respectively. In a nutshell, what are your organization's targets and main strategy when it comes to gender equality and women's leadership? Bertina.
Let me preface. So first of all, thank you for the question. I'd like to preface by saying that we have a unique code in South Africa, which actually requires all listed companies to strive for inclusive transformation. And that inclusive transformation goes beyond only the workplace, but also recognizes that who we are within the workplace is a consequence of our communities and all of our stakeholders. And so those targets for gender in specifically are actually set at the board level, at all occupational levels within the organization, and then of course as well when it comes to skills development, both in terms of what you do internally within your organization and then what you do in terms of advancing gender in terms of bursaries and donations to tertiary institutions, economic transformation relating to gender specifically insofar as we're talking about supplier and enterprises, and then of course corporate social investment. And once again, those targets speak to the extent to which we are empowering gender as well in terms of those programs. I would want to say that our strategic objective in our organization is to achieve gender equality, and that our unique South African experiences informs our view that the pursuit of gender equity, which requires of us to take fair and reasonable measures to address systemic inequalities of a social, economic, and political nature, those which have created barriers for the advancement of women. In other words, what must we do to level the playing field will eventually result in gender equality. We have been crystal clear in terms of our strategy. Gender equality requires visible leadership, commitment to gender equality. It requires representativity at all organizational levels. And that's particularly important because if as an organization we were to say, well, you know, we've got 60% female representation, but you look towards the top and you don't see that, then of course, you know, that doesn't work at all. And of course, economic empowerment of females and opportunities for education and development for females, supported by an inclusive organizational culture that not only welcomes and accepts, but values, and visibly so, the contributions of females, both within and outside our organization. Now, you know, when you look at me today, Adam, you'd say, well, you know, the Clicks organization is doing very well. The reality is that when you look back into our past, our first and largest big organization, business unit, Clicks, which is a retail front shop business unit pharmacy with over 800 stores, had its first female MD in the 1980s. And in 2006, our second largest business unit, which is a pharmaceutical wholesale and distribution business, very unlike where you'd expect to find women, was led by a female, Linda van Niekerk. And so when I look into the past, our organization, before it became legislated and required in terms of regulation, had already understood that in a company, in a country where women make up the majority and where our consumers make up the majority, how do we ensure that they are represented within the very corridors of our organization as well?
Incredible. I'd like to pose the same question to Vidyuntius. If you could just speak to the priorities of your company going through target gender equality.
Yeah, thank you, Adam, for the questions. Good morning, and also very great warm welcome from Indonesia. This is the great opportunity to share our strategy, because in talking about the target and strategy in this gender equality for Calbe, we are fostering supportive and inclusive culture to dismantle barrier to women's leadership. So we do in practical, we ensure equal opportunity for women leadership in full participation in decision making. This is what we are doing, and we are promoting men support women and also vice versa in every work process professionally based on their capabilities and accountabilities to achieve equal rights and pay. And then we also implement appropriate working condition also work-life balance, including training and education. In marketing itself, we do practices to support a woman and also avoid gender bias. And we encourage opportunity for women-led and own enterprise as part of our supply chains, because we are end-to-end supply chain for the pharmaceuticals. So we encourage more women-led and owned enterprise to participate in our supply chain infrastructures, and also building community developments to empower and invest in women. And last but not least, we have Kalbe, we call like an equality campaign. We call it in Indonesia, we call it Serasi. Serasi means Indonesian terms that means build a harmonious relationship through empathy, understanding between gender. So far, it's ongoing, and we see a very good response from our stakeholders. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you very much. And Fiona, same question to you. In a nutshell, what are your organization's targets and main strategy for gender equality?
Good morning, Adam, Vijantias, Bertina. Thank you so much for the invitation. So happy to be here. So Belsur is an energy distribution company located in El Salvador. As you know, the energy sector is one of the most male-dominated industries, not only in El Salvador, but I would say worldwide. So as part of our sustainability strategy and vision in 2019, we established our gender equality program called Equality for Progress. And one of the first things we did under this new strategy was establish a baseline assessment to be able to understand where we were in 2019 with regards to female employment in both administrative and technical positions, as well as what policies did we have in place and what were the greater challenges that we still had to face to be able to reduce that gender gap within the company. So basically, that's where we are right now. We're addressing the internal policy changes and the internal governance system, if you will, within the company to be able to attract more female personnel, specifically in technical positions that are specific to the energy sector. Most of our female workers are in the administrative positions in the company, but women in technical positions are basically non-existent. So to be able to attract more women to fulfill these positions, we need to make internal changes. We recently just launched the zero tolerance for sexual harassment in the workplace policy. We're starting to introduce gender neutral language in our hiring practices. So we're focusing on making all of these internal changes to be able to make sustainable hiring of more women in the near future.
Fantastic. Well, moving towards the relationship between gender equity and crises, I'd like to pose a question to both Bertina and Vidyuntius. Both of your organizations are active in sectors that have been especially in the spotlight since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. What has encouraged you to, in fact, double down on gender equality during these times, despite the many other priorities and urgencies? What actions, investments, and other efforts have helped you to successfully move the needle for women and girls? We'll start with Bertina.
Thank you very much for that question, Adam. One of the things that became very clear early on was that, first of all, with very restrictive lockdowns, that the most vulnerable in our society, women, lost jobs and income opportunities. And then we saw the impact of that within the broader community with the rearing of gender-based violence. And we were one of those industries that were allowed to still continue to open up and ply our trade in limited categories. But we soon understood there were two things that we needed to do. The first, we needed to be quite vocal in terms of stepping out our employer wellness program around gender-based violence, and to extend that program beyond the workplace into our communities as well. The second issue that we needed to grapple with was that normal transport opportunities were no longer available. So how did we ensure that we were able to provide women and men with opportunities to travel to work in a safe and secure manner? The third one, we soon realized as well, that the opportunities in terms of tertiary education were slipping through the fingers of our youth. So we do about 100 bursaries to students at tertiary institutions who study pharmacy every single year. Generally, with a preference, over 60% of those bursaries go to female students. And one of the things that we realized was that there had been such disruption in the education sector. So how did we ensure that those students who were our bursars continued to feel supported whilst they were actually studying from home? And so because we're the second largest employer of pharmacists, we actually found ways to ensure that they felt supported, mentored, and with a buddy throughout that period. The other one was that we actually, from the very beginning, also understood that access to primary healthcare opportunities were going to become critically important. And so we actually implemented a program where we provided primary healthcare services free of charge to people, in particular mums and babies, who didn't have access to medical aid themselves. And then, of course, what we continued to do was to ensure that our employee wellness program was extended to all household members and not only employees and their children or their partners. And so, if you will, to broaden the web of people that had access to really quality professional services.
Thank you very much, Bertina. Moving on to Vidyanti, same question. What's encouraged you to double down on gender equality in these unique times?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I think during this COVID-19 pandemic in the last 2 years, our first response is in relation to our employees, including their families. Both genders are our company assets, our partners, and also customers. So it's very important to us, and we do treat them equally. So we identify specific needs that we can put into our health protocols. For example, for expecting mothers, for family with baby and elderly that need more attention during these conditions. For example, we also provide like a special transportation during the work from home or work from office, so there will be easy transportation for women with special needs. We also extend our providing our health support to the community. So including for example, like we create a program called increase the woman role. It's a model program, and to inspire the women of Indonesia that we can do during the difficulty times during the pandemic COVID as an ambassador that encourages women to lead all these programs together. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you very much. Let's talk about another crisis, that of climate. If we want to achieve a just transition to a net zero economy, advancing gender equality is critical. But data from the Women's Empowerment Principles Gender Gap Analysis tool developed by the UN Global Compact and UN Women shows that only around a third of companies are prioritizing the recruitment of women in traditionally underrepresented roles. If we pull up the poll results, let's look at the results of the poll James introduced earlier. I see it on the screen. The correct answer is 35%. There we go. I see it there. Okay. It's great that every 1 out of 3 STEM graduates in the world is female, showing that the common excuse that there aren't just enough qualified women out there is simply not valid. But we still have more work to do to empower women because we have yet to reach gender parity or even the 42% option, which, as we can see, was the least voted on even. So there's an understanding we have a long way to go. So Fiona, what is your organization doing to advance women's leadership, particularly in STEM roles? And what do you think has been working when it comes to engaging male leaders and colleagues on the topic of gender equality in your traditionally male-dominated industry, as you noted earlier?
Thank you, Adam. So in El Salvador's case, our percentage of women studying STEM-related careers is well under the global average that you just shared with us through the poll. So in our reality, we do have a real challenge that we're facing when seeking women who have studied STEM-related careers to employ them in the energy sector and in Del Sur's reality. So we kind of took a step back in analyzing the situation, and we said, okay, let's create a sustainability program that can help us fulfill this hiring need of women that have studied STEM-related careers in the medium and long term. So with this in mind, last year we partnered with Plan International, which is one of the leading NGOs in Latin America, and we created our CSR program, Educatec, which roughly translates into education and technology. And we are working with 18 public schools in El Salvador to motivate girls, teenage girls between 14 and 18 years of age, in motivating them to study a STEM-related or technical career once they graduate high school. So we're working with the Ministry of Education to have training sessions with these girls where we show them what are STEM-related careers, what kind of jobs can you access, the salary is more competitive when you study a STEM-related career. So kind of show them all these opportunities and also break down the cultural and historical stereotypes that sometimes limit girls deciding to study these kinds of careers. It's probably true in the rest of the world, but in Latin America, women are discouraged to study STEM-related careers because it's typically believed that it's a male-dominated world, that women shouldn't be there, women should be in the home or taking care of their children. So this program not only sensitizes girls, but also sensitizes parents so that they support their daughters if they decide to study these types of careers. And an important aspect that we're incorporating into Educatec is the fact that we are asking male colleagues within Del Sur that are in technical roles to volunteer in the program to share their experience with these girls. So we're including men and the male vision in this program, because in Del Sur we believe that gender equality does not happen in spite of men. Gender equality will only be achieved when you're in an equal playing field and both men and women benefit from the same reality. So this volunteering aspect has included the male vision, but also female colleagues that want to participate as well. So this year, we're starting with the actual implementation of the program in 18 public high schools, and we wish to expand the program into more schools starting in 2023.
Perfect. So with that, I'm going to move on to one final question for all panelists. But before I do, and with your comments, Fiona, in response related to the criticality of men taking a stand on gender equality as well, I did want to congratulate Vidyantius on his role as an official G20 advocate for G20 for gender equality. So just congratulations for that. It's a critical role to play, and we're grateful for it. But with that, as a last question, with a brief answer, as brief as we could have it from all speakers, we obviously want to talk about our successes, but want to be honest and practical about what's not working. So I'm hoping or asking if each of you could share one short lesson that you've learned from your efforts that perhaps didn't meet its intended mark, so that we could all learn from each other's process. If we could start with Bertina.
Well, I know that our time's limited, so I'll try to be brief. I think what we learned is that if you focus only on diversity, you run the risk of not getting to inclusivity, and you don't look at the intersectionality, in terms of all of the areas. And once we started doing that, we were only really then able to come to grips with unconscious bias and microaggressions, which is a very difficult topic to get a hold of. And then I would say, finally, is that we perhaps took a scorecard approach and didn't spend sufficient time also celebrating successes, writing up best case studies, and recognizing champions of change.
Thank you, Bertina. Vidyantius.
Yeah, I think in our group, because we have the business of distribution and logistics, I think we need a lot of things that we to do to provide more, we call it as a woman-led and woman-owned enterprise to join so we open the opportunity And so far, we are just come up with a 10% contribution. So we need to do some more in the future that we can have the role of the leadership in this supply chain. It will be more and more. So we provide a lot of education and also assistance and including financial matters. So we provide this room for the more contribution in the future. Thank you.
And Fiona.
I would say one of the biggest lessons learned is when carrying out sensitization campaigns about gender equality within the company's personnel, it's important to tailor these messages to the different realities and the different types of employees that you have within the company. There exist different subcultures within a company, so it's important to kind of target specific messages to specific audiences within the company. It's different to talk to a person in a technical position than an administrative position, than a manager, than a lower level employee. So I would say that's an important thing to take into account.
Thank you. Well, so with that, I'd like to thank our illustrious speakers, Bertina, Vidyantias, Fiona. Thank you very much for sharing your leadership with us. What's clear to me from this conversation is that no matter where you are in the world, and no matter the local or global crises being navigated by your company, gender equality ambition is a critical component of any corporate response. It is the responsibility and an opportunity for business leaders to double down on gender equality efforts to tackle the range of current crises. For those looking for support developing robust plans to integrate gender equality leadership, I encourage you to sign up for the Target Gender Equality Accelerator provided by your local network. The application opens today and can be found on the UN Global Compact website. So with that, I'd also like to thank our audience and pass it back to our MC, James. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Thanks so much to Adam Roy Gordon for leading another excellent discussion there with all of your speakers from around the world. It really has ignited our imagination and some of the knowledge gaining on how we're going to make the best use of this day and what we're going to take away from here on in. Remember, just like our panelists, you can sign up to be a part of the Target Gender Equality Initiative. You can do that at the UN Global Compact website. This accelerator program, as we told you earlier, is available in well over 50 countries. Adam heads up the one in the United States, which is just one of their more than 50. They're across all regions. They support companies in setting and in meeting bold and ambitious targets for women's leadership. And just as Adam said, it's encouraging to see that over 90% of companies that have participated in the program either have targets in place now or are revising existing targets or drafting new targets for gender equality after participating in this initiative. So it really does bring very strong results and outcomes. Now, talking about strong results and outcomes, we started off this day on a tone of respect and also with urgency as we look at interconnected emergencies around the world. Ukraine is one of them, but it's one that's in particular acute focus as we look at the news headlines and the suffering that's happening as we speak. The private sector, as we said, has the power, has the transformative power to support that in so many different ways. As we mentioned, financial contributions to reputable aid agencies is very valuable and one of the most effective forms of response in a humanitarian emergency. I'm going to step aside over here so that you can clearly scan the QR code that's come up on your screen over here. If you wish to make a donation, you can do that right now by contributing to the Ukraine Humanitarian Fund. Use your mobile device to scan that code. It will access you into the area that you need to be. The United Nations and global and local humanitarian partners are committed to providing humanitarian assistance to the people of Ukraine. I mean, I think that is what the UN does best, which is meeting people in times of great crises in their lives. So if you wish to make a donation, you can contribute right there by scanning that QR code to the Ukraine Humanitarian Fund, which is linked in the chat function, or as I said, in that QR code on your screen. The private sector can also support in other ways. You are the bedrock, the fount of innovative ideas and how to bring those ideas to reality. You can make all kinds of in-kind contributions, engaging in joint advocacy, for example, but also in developing innovative solutions to meet the needs of those who have been impacted by this ongoing conflict. UN Global Compact plays a very important role in that, because together with OCHA and the Connecting Business Initiative, it has put together a business guide that you can follow. It's a step-by-step guide that details ways in which companies like yours can offer support to people in Ukraine. So please be sure to read this report and also to share it with your colleagues, with your friends, with your networks. If you want to make an offer, or if you have any questions, you can get in touch with a team who are leading this initiative. The email address you need is very simple. It's Ukraine Crisis Response at unglobalcompact.org. And I'll repeat that one more time. Ukraine Crisis Response at unglobalcompact.org. Now, it is coming up to, let's have a quick check on the clock, 10:52 p.m. in Hong Kong, where I am, which means it's 10:52 a.m. over in New York, where UN Global Compact is headquartered. As we progress into the late morning on that part of the planet, let's move into learning paths. This is another innovative feature of the program we have for you. For these sessions, we will focus on the workplace, and we're going to give you 3 options here on what you can do. Your breakout options are here on the screen. The main stage is how we created a mentorship system. Side stage 1 is how we're ensuring flexibility during the pandemic and beyond. Side stage 2 is how we make gender equality a priority in the boardroom. And side stage 3 prime, gender equality at the intersection of sustainable transformation. So we just leave that slide up for you for just a moment so you can digest on what's available to you and also where you need to head to for that. Main stage 1, 2, and 3, and they all are united by a theme of Learning Paths Workplace. And remember, you can just navigate through the features that we've designed for you to find your way to the appropriate virtual space where you'll meet all the other attendees who have chosen the same. So enjoy that learning paths. It takes us over for the next 30 minutes, and I'll see you back here in about a half hour.